Hey guys, welcome back to Fazbear Frights, the final story in Step Closer, apparently the saddest one, and I'm really excited to finish it up because it's about Susie, one of the missing children, and we've already definitely figured that out in this story. It seems like she's haunting her sister, possibly. Not entirely sure. I'm sure everything will be made clear by the end. Let's continue. Susie sat on the end of Samantha's bed and watched her sister read a book. Samantha seemed tense. She held the book stiffly, and she took a long time to turn the pages. "I have a confession," Susie said. Samantha didn't look up. "I miss you guys when we're apart, and I know you miss me too." Samantha turned a page. Her hand trembled. "And I miss Gretchen. Do you miss her?" Samantha kept reading. Susie never liked it when Samantha ignored her, but she didn't let it shut her up. "I don't know why, but I can't remember where I hid Gretchen." Susie chewed on a knuckle. "I don't think—" She stopped talking. This wasn't working. Samantha wasn't going to help her. Why couldn't Susie remember where she hid Gretchen? She remembered how angry and upset she was when Samantha was going to make Gretchen study. Gretchen was a sensitive doll. Freckled and curly blonde-haired, Gretchen's soft round face was painted with a shy smile. The kind of smile that told Susie she was easily scared. When Susie hid Gretchen, she'd been wearing a pink and purple polka dot dress that Jeannie made. The dress was supposed to be fun. It was supposed to help Gretchen be happier. But then Samantha was going to put pressure on Gretchen to learn stuff. Not even polka dots could win out over that. Susie knew that Gretchen still needed to be with her. Susie was the only person who understood her. She knew what it was like to want to be happy and to have fun in a world that wanted you to learn and keep getting better at things. She couldn't leave Gretchen alone, lost in some forgotten hiding spot. She wished Samantha would listen. Susie reached over the book Samantha was holding. She waved her hand around. Samantha's face got white, and she held very still. What was she thinking, Susie wondered. She would have asked, but she knew Samantha wouldn't answer her. Sometimes Samantha acted like this, and sometimes Samantha acted normal. Their grandma used to say, "That's Samantha, she's a hard child to read, but Susie is an open book." If Susie was so open, why couldn't Samantha get what Susie was trying to tell her? How could Susie make Samantha understand? Samantha leaped out of bed and put her book neatly on the corner of her desk. Sitting in her straight-backed white desk chair, she opened a drawer and pulled out construction paper and crayons. That was it. Maybe Susie could draw a picture. Samantha would see it and remember Gretchen. Or maybe if Susie drew a picture, she'd remember where she hid Gretchen. Susie stared at the paper and crayons. Would Samantha share? "Samantha, could you come here, please?" their mother called. Perfect. Susie waited for Samantha to leave the room, and then she stole a pink piece of paper and a purple crayon that had been barely used. She plunked herself down on Samantha's blue rug and stretched out on her stomach. Tucking her tongue firmly between her lips, Susie started drawing. It took all of her concentration to make sure the drawing showed up on the page, but it did. Drawing was all she could do. If she wrote a note, Samantha wouldn't read it. "Don't draw too long," Susie's mom said, out in the hallway. "I'll be in to tuck you in soon." Susie heard Samantha's footsteps coming. She hurried to finish her drawing. When she was done, she left it lying on the floor and retreated to the window seat. Tucking herself into a small ball, Susie looked out the window. She couldn't see Oliver because the window reflected Samantha's bright room. She could see, though, a couple of leaves pushing against the window. Leaning forward, she realized they belonged to Ivy, the vine that climbed up the trellis above the porch roof. Susie smiled. She remembered when her dad had put that trellis on the roof. Her mom's ivy, which Susie had named Ivy, of course, had climbed up the porch posts at the front of the house, and her mom had wanted to cut it. Susie thought that would be sad. "Can't you let Ivy climb higher?" she'd asked. Her mom said, "Well, if we had a trellis." Now it looked like Ivy had reached the top of the trellis and was trying to climb into Samantha's room. Would Ivy have better luck getting Samantha to talk? Samantha burst into her room and headed toward her desk. If she wanted to finish her drawing tonight, she'd have to hurry. Before she reached her desk, though, Samantha noticed something on the floor. Nothing besides the rug was supposed to be on the floor, but a piece of pink paper lay on it. The paper hadn't been there when she left the room, she was sure of it. Her mom had been with her downstairs the whole time. No one else was in the house. That meant Samantha didn't want to look. If she looked, no longer in a hurry to draw, Samantha stared at the pink paper for a very long time. Eventually, she convinced herself that picking it up was better than letting it lie there. As long as it was on the floor, Samantha would come up with all kinds of scary reasons for it to be there. If she picked it up, she'd know why it was there, for sure. Susie always thought Samantha didn't have much imagination. That wasn't true. The problem with Samantha was that she had too much imagination. She had so much imagination that she could scare herself silly with just a thought or two. Taking slow, quiet steps, Samantha walked towards the rug. She didn't take her eyes off the paper as she walked. She couldn't have said why. Did she think it was going to leap off the floor and attack her? And do what? Give her paper cuts? Samantha had gotten one of those when she was little. Susie had cried when she saw the blood. Samantha didn't. Yes, it stung a little, but she thought it was more interesting than painful. How could something as flimsy as paper cut you? When Samantha picked up the paper, she saw some squiggly purple lines. But she gazed at the paper and the squiggly lines, and they began to form into shapes that made some kind of sense. The drawing had 3 parts, like the panels in newspaper comics. The first part, on the far left of the page, was a drawing of 2 little girls. One had a ponytail, and one had hair that was flying all around her face. The flying-haired girl held what looked like a mirror in one hand. She extended the mirror out toward what seemed to be a baby floating in the air. The other hand was held out to the ponytailed girl. Between the baby and the girl, a big chick with spiky teeth held up its hands. Huh? The second part of the drawing, which was separated from the first part by a vertical line, showed the moon over a house that looked a little like Samantha's house. The flying-haired girl was walking away from the house, holding hands with that same chick. To the right of this second drawing, another vertical line separated the second drawing from a third one. The third one also had a moon, a house, and the flying-haired girl walking away, hand in hand with the chick. But after the third drawing, there was a heavy, dark line. Samantha could see where the crayon had been moved over and over until it created a thick, slashing shape that Samantha didn't understand. Frowning, she stared at the picture. Had she drawn it and then forgotten? If only she could believe that. "I wish you would just talk to me," Susie whispered. "I miss when we used to talk. I know you thought I talked too much, but you still listened. I'd really liked someone to listen." She was so frustrated. This reminded her of playing charades. Once, she'd played charades at her friend Chloe's birthday party. Susie liked all games, but charades wasn't as fun as she wanted it to be. She thought she was being so clear with her acted-out clues, but no one got what she was trying to make them see. No one guessed right. When she told her mom about it later, her mom said, "You don't think the way other people do. That's a good thing. You're super creative." Not creative enough, Susie thought, as she stared at the drawing she left on the rug. What else could she do? Jumping up from the window seat, Susie ran to Samantha's desk. She noticed Samantha looked up from the pink and purple drawing when she rushed past, but Susie didn't bother to say anything. When Samantha was acting like this, there was no point. Besides, Susie wanted to draw something else. At Samantha's desk, Susie grabbed a piece of pale yellow paper and a black crayon. She plopped down in Samantha's desk chair and started again. Samantha had felt the air shift, but she didn't want to think about why it shifted. She also knew, somehow, that she couldn't turn around. Samantha covered her mouth with her hand so she wouldn't giggle. Samantha wasn't normally a giggler. Well, sometimes her dad could get her to giggle by tickling her, but this wasn't a tickle giggle. This giggle came from some terrified place inside of her, a place where she was hysterical. That was a word her dad often used for her, before he left them all. Samantha didn't want to be hysterical. She counted her breaths like she did in therapy. 1, 2, 3, 4. The air in Samantha's room had become thick and sticky like molasses. Samantha didn't know what would make air feel like molasses, but it didn't feel right to be inside of air like that. She had to get out of here. Leaving the drawing where she found it, she started to run from the room, but at the doorway she stopped. Something was lying on her desk. Another drawing. Samantha winced and shrank away, but she couldn't remove her gaze. Like the first drawing, this one had 3 boxes. In the first, the same flying-haired girl was walking away from the front door of the same house. The moon was a thin sliver, kind of like the moon Samantha had seen the previous night. In the second box, the same girl was walking away from the same door, but the moon was a bigger sliver. And then in the third box, the girl wasn't even there. The box just showed the house's door and an even bigger moon. "Are you ready for bed?" Samantha's mom called. Ignoring the weird air in the room, Samantha gathered the drawings and shoved them under her covers. She'd look at them later again, tonight, by flashlight. Susie usually waited until their mom left to crawl into bed with her sister. But tonight was different. She didn't want to waste a second being apart. Curling up on the window side of Samantha's bed, Susie watched Samantha go through her funny bedtime ritual. First, Samantha had to sit at her desk and write a paragraph, at least a paragraph, in her diary. Then she had to go across the hall to the bathroom and brush her teeth. Then she had to pee, and then she had to drink half a glass of water. "That will just make you have to pee again," Susie had told her sister one night. Samantha just stuck out her tongue. After the water, Samantha touched her toes 4 times, and then she brushed her hair 50 times. Then she went to her doll bin and said goodnight to her dolls. Then she got in bed. None of these things were funny by themselves, but the way Samantha did them all the same way every night in the same order was funny. At least to Susie. Tonight the routine was a tiny bit different because Samantha got her small flashlight from her nightstand drawer. When Samantha slid under the covers, she pulled the flashlight under the covers with the drawings she'd stuffed under there, and the drawings crinkled. Susie listened to them rustle as Samantha shoved them further down in her covers, and then arranged herself sort of like a sleeping princess. Finally she called out, "I'm ready, Mom." Susie studied Samantha's profile while they waited for her mom to come into the room. Samantha had a little bump on her nose about halfway up from the rounded tip. Susie liked that bump. Susie didn't have a bump, and she thought bumps made noses interesting. She also liked the little checkmark-shaped scar under Samantha's right eye. Susie did have a scar, but hers was hidden under the hair at the top of her forehead. Susie got her scar because she was doing something she wasn't supposed to. Samantha got her scar because Susie was doing something she wasn't supposed to. Susie loved to climb on things when she was little. One of her favorite things to do was to get up on the porch rail and try to walk all the way around the house on it. She was good at balancing on the rail, but climbing around the posts that held it up could be hard, because her arms were too short to wrap around them. She fell a lot, usually landing in her mom's flower beds, and getting in trouble. Their mom was super serious about her flowers. One day, Susie was brushing off the dirt from her latest fall. Samantha said, "There's a better way to get around the posts." "Who says?" "I say." "How do you know?" "I just do, and I know how to do it, too." "Okay, then show me," Susie said. "No, Mom said not to get up there." "Well, then why did you say that?" "Because there's a better way." "But if you're not going to show it to me, who cares if there's a better way? You're just being a know-it-all." "I am not. R2. The girls faced off next to the yellow begonias at the side of the house. Hands on hips, they glared at each other, practically nose to nose. Even though Susie was a year older, she wasn't any taller than her sister. "I think you're lying about a better way," Susie said. "I'm not lying." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." By now they were both yelling. "What are you girls fighting about?" their mom called. She was inside the house doing laundry, and Susie wanted her to stay so they could keep playing. She leaned toward Samantha until they touched noses, and then she whispered, "Yes, you are." Samantha made her Pekingese face and said, "Fine." Then she marched around Susie and climbed up onto the railing next to one of the posts. Susie's mouth dropped open. Samantha put her back to the post and said, "See, you have to go around it facing out, not in. That way, the weight of your butt doesn't pull you off the railing." Samantha started to demonstrate, but her foot slipped. She lost her grip and fell forward off the railing and into the flower bed. Susie had fallen there before and just gotten dirty, but somehow Samantha's face struck the top of one of the stakes holding up their mom's flowers. Samantha was mad at Susie for days after that, not only because she had to have stitches, but also because she got in just as much trouble for being on the railing. "It was her idea," Samantha had yelled, pointing at Susie. "You know better than that," their mom said to Samantha. "You don't do anything you don't want to do." She was right about that. Like now. "Not that story," Samantha was saying to their mom. "I want you to read the one about the happy ghost." Susie smiled. This had become Samantha's favorite story lately. Susie's mom looked like she was going to argue, but then she sighed and picked up the top book from the neat pile on Samantha's nightstand. Susie's mom sat on the edge of the bed. Susie wished she could do something for her mom. She looked so pale. No, more than pale. She looked like her skin was turning invisible. Susie could see her mom's veins crawling over her forehead and up her hands and arms. They looked like blue worms. The first time Susie had seen veins like that was on an old lady. She'd thought they were worms and she'd screamed. Her mom explained what the blue jagged lines were. In a tall old house on top of a tall old mountain, the tall old ghost floated through the main hall. Susie's mom began reading. Susie plumped the pillow under her head and scooted closer to Samantha. Samantha's breath caught, and she turned into a Samantha log, as if an evil witch had suddenly frozen her. Susie sniffed and backed away. Why was Samantha so mad at her? The tall old ghost in the tall old house wasn't a pretty ghost, Susie's mom read. But he was a happy ghost. He was a very, very happy ghost. Susie noticed her mom's eyes were shiny and wet. Susie also noticed her mom's voice sounded choked and crackly. Keep going, Samantha said. Their mother sighed again. Susie's mom returned to the familiar story about the ghost who was happy because he got to spend forever with his family, until he found out he wouldn't spend forever with them, since they were moving. That part always made Susie as sad as it made the ghost in the story. She couldn't imagine moving out of this house. Who would take care of Oliver? Susie's mom read quickly until she got to the part where the ghost found out that if he went away from the house to a special place of sparkly light where all the truly happy ghosts hung out, the ghost could never be separated from his family no matter where they went. She slowed down over that part, and she cleared her throat a lot. Susie thought it would be very nice to be in a place where you'd never be separated from your family. She loved being with her mom and Samantha. Samantha could be a pain, but she was Susie's sister. When the story was done, Susie's mom stood, hesitated, and went to the door. Sleep sweet, she said. Susie wished her mom would kiss and hug them good night like she used to. But Samantha had decided they were too old for that, and she wouldn't let her mom do that anymore. Apparently her mom thought Susie agreed with Samantha, but she didn't. As soon as their mom turned off the light, Samantha curled onto her side. Good night, Samantha, Susie said, but her sister didn't respond. Susie shrugged and curled into a ball facing the window. She looked at the skinny, curved piece of the moon that peeked into the room. Its light wasn't bright enough to see by, but it was bright enough to make a lot of funny shadows. 2 of the shadows looked like dancing hippopotamuses, and 3 of them combined to look like a clown riding a horse. One of them looked a little like... Susie closed her eyes. She listened to Samantha breathe, and she wondered if her sister had understood the drawings. Samantha hadn't said anything before she stuffed them under her covers. Why did she even put them there? Outside, a dull thud sounded up on the porch. Already? Susie didn't want to leave yet. She was hoping Samantha would take another look at the drawings. She just had to figure them out. The thud was followed by a faint squeak, the sound of the porch swing moving. Then the thud turned into the footstep pattern Susie was used to. Thud, tap, thud, tap. Why did that sound make her skin crawl? Why did she feel like she should know what was out there? Why did she feel like she had to know? Susie pushed back the covers and got out of bed as if someone was pulling her from its safety. It was like one of those tractor beams she'd seen in the space movies her dad liked to watch. She had no control. She wanted to stay in the nice warm bed, but instead she walked out of the room and down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs she listened to the footsteps, and she watched a large shadow pass the dining room window. Once it passed, she trotted into the kitchen and opened the back door. She waited. Sometimes Samantha would come back and slam the door, and they'd go back to bed. But not tonight. Tonight, Susie could only stand there, listening to the footsteps come closer and closer. At the last minute, just before the steps came around the corner, she closed the kitchen door. She tried to go back upstairs, but she couldn't. Instead, her feet took her to the entryway. The house had a really big entryway, a formal entryway, her mother called it. She told Susie that in the old days there used to be a round table in the middle of every entryway. The table always held a vase of flowers from the garden, but Susie's mom had to put the table away when Susie's first walking had turned into wild running because Susie kept bumping into the table and knocking off the vase. She broke 7 vases before I gave up, Susie's mom liked to tell people. She never said it like she was mad. It seemed to make her happy for some reason. Now the big entryway held only a maroon and navy blue braided rug. Susie went to the middle of the rug and waited. When the shadows shifted outside and the shape circling the house approached the front door, Susie stepped forward and opened it. As Susie knew she would be, Chica stood tall and stiff outside the front door. The porch light played with Chica's yellow body, making it look like the animatronic was breathing. Susie looked up at Chica's pinkish-purple eyes. Did Chica's big black eyebrows just move? Susie looked down quickly. Chica's orange feet were planted on the welcome mat, one foot over the W and one over the M. As always, Susie hesitated, but then she did as she knew she must. She held out her hand and let Chica enclose her stiff, cold fingers over her own. Chica turned and walked toward the steps leading down into the leaf-covered front lawn. Susie had no choice but to go along. Now the small taps of her own footsteps joined with Chica's, and leaves crunched under their feet as they left Susie's house behind them. In hushed stillness, Samantha listened to be sure her mother was in her room. She had to listen hard because the thick walls blocked little sounds. Eventually, though, she heard a creak she recognized as her mother's bed. She waited a few more minutes before turning on the flashlight under her covers and reaching for the drawings. Samantha almost didn't need to see them. They'd been on her mind since the moment they appeared. In that time, she let herself admit that she knew the first picture was of her and Susie. But what did it mean? Tending her sheet and blanket, she aimed her flashlight at the drawing of the little girls. At first, Samantha thought the flying-haired girl, Susie, held a mirror, but she quickly realized it was a magnifying glass. It looked like the one her dad used to have in his desk drawer in his office, the one he sometimes let the girls use to look at things up close. Samantha never forgot seeing Oliver's wood bark up close. It was like seeing a whole other world. Susie could name things all she wanted, but Samantha would rather study them. That's what she used the magnifying glass for. Close-up study. Susie, though, used it to hunt. After Susie used the glass to look at a caterpillar up close, she decided to use it to find teeny-tiny insects in the lawn. She was sure she was going to find something no one had seen ever before. When Samantha used the glass to look at Oliver's bark, Susie grabbed it and aimed it at a different part of the trunk. "Maybe we'll find some elves," she said. Okay, so if Susie was holding a magnifying glass, she was looking for something. But what? The floating baby? Oh, no, not a baby. The floating thing was a doll. Samantha frowned. If Susie was looking for a doll, there was only one doll missing. It had to be Gretchen, so Susie wanted her back. But what about the chick? What was that? Samantha didn't understand the toothy chick. And what did the other drawing mean? Samantha aimed her flashlight at the second drawing. It was just as she remembered. 3 panels with the flying-haired girl walking away from a door in the first 2. Just the door in the third, and the moon that were a bit bigger in each panel. What did that mean? What if the moons getting bigger meant that each panel was a different day? Like tonight, tomorrow night, and the next night. Samantha thought about her sister, the doll, and the moons. She got it. Turning off the flashlight, she thought, Susie's only going to be here for 2 more nights. She was pretty sure she had it right, but the chick. What was the chick there for, she whispered. Susie, of course, didn't answer because she was gone. Samantha's alarm woke her before the sun came up. Thankfully, she was a light sleeper, so it didn't take much volume for her to hear it. And she was sure it wouldn't disturb her mom. Her mom had trouble going to sleep, but when she was asleep, she had just as much trouble waking up. Samantha had overheard her mother telling Jeannie that she could only sleep with the help of pills. The pills seemed to make mornings really hard, and Samantha had learned not to talk to her mom before school. Once, Samantha had forgotten part of a school project. She and her mom were rushing around already because her mom had overslept. Then they had finally run out of the house and to the car, and her mom had driven only as far as the bottom of their driveway, when Samantha realized what she'd left behind in her room. "I have to go back," she said. Her mom hit the brakes so hard Samantha's head shot forward and back. She figured her mom would quickly drive back up to the house. Instead, her mom bent over and pounded her head several times on the steering wheel. She whispered something over and over while she did it. Samantha thought it sounded like, "I can't do this." Now, Samantha lay in the dark, holding her alarm clock for several minutes. She didn't like getting up early. Susie had been the one who always wanted to hop out of bed and start playing before the sun was up. Susie was like their dad, who said the best part of the day was just before dawn, when everything was in a state of possibility. "Smell that air," he'd say to Samantha on the few mornings he was able to talk to her into getting up early. "Look at that pink light." "It's so pretty," Susie would squeal. Not pretty enough to get her up early for, Samantha thought. This morning, though, it wasn't the smell of or the color that got Samantha out of bed. It was what she needed to do. She only had 2 more days to find Gretchen. She didn't know what would happen if she didn't find Gretchen. She didn't understand why a missing doll could mean so much to her dead sister. Susie was a ghost, wasn't she? Why would a ghost want something like a doll? But it didn't matter. Susie wanted it, and after what had happened to her, she deserved to get what she wanted. Samantha threw back the covers. Cold air hit her bare legs, and goosebumps prickled her skin. She ignored her desire to dive back into bed. Instead, she stood, letting the thick, soft material of her blue flannel nightgown block some of the cold air. She stuffed her feet into the leather moccasin slippers Jeanie had gotten for her. Samantha didn't like fuzzy animal slippers like Susie did. Grabbed the clothes she laid out during the night, and trotted into the bathroom on tiptoe. Thankful for the little space heater that sat on a sturdy footstool by the bathroom door, Samantha turned it on and stood in front of it for a couple minutes to warm up. Then she did a short version of her morning routine before getting dressed. After she realized what Susie's drawings meant, Samantha had tried to stay awake long enough for her mom's pills to work, so she could start looking for Gretchen. But she kept hearing her mom's bed creak, which meant her mom was not deeply asleep. Samantha's eyes had started to close, so she set her alarm for the morning. When she finished in the bathroom, Samantha turned off the heater and opened the door. Stepping into the hallway, she stood on the dark green braided runner and thought about where Susie might have hidden Gretchen. Samantha glanced at Susie's closed door. She shook her head. The doll wouldn't be in there. When Samantha and Susie had fought about Gretchen, Susie was as upset as she could possibly get. She wouldn't have put the doll in her room where Samantha could easily find it, and even if it was in there, that was going to be the last place Samantha looked. She hadn't been in Susie's room since that horrible night when... Samantha went down the hall toward the stairs. If she was going to look for the doll, she would do it in an organized way. It made sense to start at the bottom of the house and work up. Besides, on the first floor, there was less chance she'd wake her mom. The porch light's pale yellow glow stretched up the stairs, through the lead glass window in the front door. The light was mottled and eerie. "How can glass be lead?" Susie had asked when their dad told them what the glass in the door was called. Samantha smiled now as she walked down the stairs. Susie was always asking questions like that. Samantha was never really sure if Susie was being funny or dumb. At the bottom of the stairs, Samantha looked both ways. She could go either into the dining room or the living room. Besides the kitchen, the only other rooms on the first floor were a small bathroom and her dad's office. She doubted the doll would be in either of those rooms because there weren't any hiding places in there. She started in the dining room. The dining room was at least double the size of any dining room Samantha had seen on TV. She couldn't really compare it to other people's dining rooms because she hadn't seen any others. She didn't have any friends. When Susie was alive, Samantha was sometimes invited to parties that Susie went to, but she stopped going after attending a couple. They were stupid and boring, and the kids were always mean to her. Samantha wiped her forehead to brush away her memories. She turned on the wall switch so the light fixture over the table would come on low. The light was a big metal wheel with fake candles along its rim. Jeanie said the light fixture was farmhouse style, whatever that meant. "Why is it called a fixture?" Susie asked when they were little. "It doesn't fix anything." Samantha crossed to the tall, carved hutch that sat beside one of the long, dark dining tables. She opened the lower doors. The hutch was full of china and crystal, dishes and glasses their family never used. She peered behind the stacks of plates and bowls. No Gretchen. Moving on to the long, low cabinet at the back of the room, the sideboard, Jean called it, Samantha opened all the compartments and found lots of serving platters and vases. No Gretchen. She went to the front of the room and opened the lid of the window seat. It was filled with tablecloths and napkins. Just to be sure, she dug under and between the stacks. No doll. She went into the living room next. Outside, on the street, she heard the roar of the garbage truck emptying trash cans from all over the houses. She chewed her lower lip. Would the garbage truck wake her mom? She'd better hurry. The living room was big and filled with puffy, comfy furniture. It was too bad they hardly used it. Samantha looked longingly at the long plaid sofa that faced the stone fireplace at one end of the room. 2 solid burgundy love seats joined the sofa to make a U shape. Filling in the corners with chunky oak end tables and centering around a square green ottoman, this was the place where the family used to play games by the fire. At the other end of the living room was another big sofa, and a couple of recliner chairs facing a small, flat-screen TV. Sometimes her mom would let Samantha watch that TV, but most of the time, she was supposed to watch shows on the computers in her room. Around the edge of the room, built-in oak shelves and cabinets were stuffed with books and pictures and frames. Samantha remembered Susie's feelings about those shelves, and some of the other furniture. "Oak?" Susie said one day when she was about 6. "Oak like olive?" "Furniture is made from wood," their dad said, "and wood comes from trees." "So they kill trees to make furniture?" Susie squealed. Their parents had spent most of an hour trying to convince her the trees didn't feel any pain when they were cut down. They never succeeded. Susie was sure the trees hurt. Samantha started searching all the cabinets beginning at the front corner and working clockwise around. When she didn't find anything, she felt behind all the books on the shelves, but she could only reach the bottom 3 rows. She trotted into the kitchen pantry and got the stepladder that was kept in there. Defying her orderly plan, she searched the pantry while she was there. She found evidence that someone, other than her, had been hiding sweets. Old hardened bag of marshmallows, 2 half-eaten packages of chocolate chip cookies, an unopened box of old-fashioned donuts with a sell-it-by date that was a year ago, and a metal container of hard butterscotch candies that were all stuck together. But she didn't find Gretchen. Dragging the ladder back to the living room, she climbed up and down it 14 times to look behind books and pictures. She found nothing but a lot of dust, which made her sad, because her mother used to want the house to be spick and span. She remembered how the house used to smell like lemons from the spray her mom used when she dusted. Now it just smelled like dust. When she'd exhausted all the living room hiding spots, Samantha looked at the big wooden grandfather clock in the back hall. She had to get ready for school soon, and she had to wake her mom. Before dragging the stepladder back into the kitchen, she peeked her head into the office. The only potential hiding place here was her dad's empty desk. She hurried in and opened all the drawers and looked in the cubbyhole where she once hung out by her dad's knees when she was really small. Nothing. There was nothing to see in the entire room, just the desk and the empty shelves. The only other thing Samantha saw as she rushed from the room was a funny little piece of carpet stuck under the edge of one of the shelves. Risking a search of the kitchen before waking her mom, Samantha opened one cabinet and drawer after another, feeling behind dishes, pots and pans, plastic containers, baskets, and utensils. Gretchen remained hidden. Samantha felt Susie's presence as soon as she got into the minivan after school that day. How did Susie do it? Samantha was sure Susie had never been around that morning, and she knew Susie was never in school. Samantha ignored her sister's insistent presence and stared at the back of her mom's messy hair. Did her mom know Susie was here? Samantha wondered if she should ask. Maybe not while her mom was driving. When her mom pulled into the driveway, Samantha turned to stare at Oliver, almost as if someone was making her do it. Usually she ignored Oliver. Was Susie making her look? How? Oliver only had a few leaves left. Maybe she'd come out and count them before dinner. No, she had to keep looking for Gretchen. "Beans and franks for dinner?" her mom asked. Something that felt like a wave flowed through Samantha. The wave was dark and kind of oily. It wanted to cling to Samantha the way sadness had clung to her since Susie was gone. She thought the wave was emotion, but was it hers, or was it Susie's? Susie loved beans and franks. Was she sad that she couldn't have any? Did they have food where she'd gone at when she died? "Beans and franks are okay," Samantha said. "Can we have pineapple too?" In her mind, she saw Susie screw up her face in disgust. Did Susie put that image there? Samantha had always liked pineapple with beans, and Susie thought that was gross. Their mom gave Samantha a half smile. Sure. Alright, and that is all for now. Sadly, I don't think that we're going to be finishing this story today. We'll make it a part 3, and I'm going to try and get that out as soon as I can. I'll see you guys next time. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious to hear it, actually, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.